Hello and welcome to the Foxcatcher Review this week. My name's Julian Valence, joined as always up in Sin City by Nick Ashman. How was the weekend, mate?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I was up and about with Sir Delius winning the Chairman's. I thought he was magnificent. We'll touch on him in a moment's time, but very strong late. That's what you want to see. I think the Q22 is his to lose. At Scone, I thought played pretty much the way we thought it would. Some good performances there. Not sure how many we're going to follow out of the meeting going forward. I like watching the Flemington meeting down your way. Rain on race days, we know they get away from the inside part of the track. The Ramsden Stakes, I looked at the time. They ran fast overall time off a fast clip. Keen to get your thoughts on that a little bit later in the show. But it's that time of year, isn't it? I keep talking about there's a lot of work as a form analyst because you're doing these, I won't say it's standalone, Jules. You're doing these off-Broadway, that's a word you like.
Yes.
Off-Broadway meetings on Saturdays. It's hard to get the benchmark figures, and then they either shift to Doomben from Scone or they come back to Sydney and try and bag a June Stakes or some sort of listed race down here. So it's a very tricky time of the year.
It's a really good point. It's a tricky time of the year also because sometimes we've had really dry tracks down in Victoria and then we hit this really wet track at Flemington and then it might become dry again and you've got to work out what horses are going to be suited by the different conditions that we might have from week to week, which we obviously get in winter times. But you touched on Sir Delius and, yeah, you're right. We're going to talk about him a little bit later and you identified that on the preview show on the Thursday that he was going to be the horse. It was going to be the big talking horse to come out of the race after he would win. You knocked off my man, to be honest. We rode to your track pattern of how the track was going to race. We gave specific instructions how to ride floating, and they almost pulled it off, to be honest. So you would have been throwing rocks at me, but to be honest, mate, you should be throwing rocks at yourself because it was your track pattern that gave us the intel.
So I ranked Tim Clark during the week. He's on Sir Delius, and I was talking to him, and I'm like, yeah, it's going to be lanes 5 and beyond. He's like, okay, and then he's jumped out, and he hasn't gone to the lead, which on a gay Waterhouse trained horse is a dead set give up that they clearly think the inside's off. I'm like, okay, good, this is good. And then I saw your horse, and people don't know this, but I was tipping it to win the Scone Cup because I know it's ready to win. And then you tell me, because you do some work with Matty Smith, you tell me he's going up to the Chairman's. I'm like, oh, he's fitter. I know my horse is better than yours. I know Delius is better than floating, but you're fitter. And I know you know how to ride that track because I told you. And I'm thinking to myself, Anyway, it doesn't matter. We got the cash. You guys ran a good second.
Yeah, you did.
He went very good.
He ran really well. So anyway, let's get into the track analysis. Scone, mate. What did we think? How did that track play? It was true position the entire circuit. Really interesting. So obviously the second day after they ran the Friday, then the Saturday, we actually got the upgrade. Don't see that too often on two different days, but soft 6 upgraded to a soft 5 after race 5. How did it play?
Yeah, 8 of the 10 winners in lanes 3 to 8. So it was just through the middle there. As we put that update out on our socials on Saturday morning. Obviously, we couldn't give you the track information until that Friday meeting had been run. The information we got coming through is that they would probably just be a fraction off the rail in the home straight, and they might get a touch wider through the middle stages of the meeting and then come back down towards the inside later in the day. And that's pretty much exactly how it panned out. So worth noting that we only had one winner win all day at Scone, one leader win all day at Scone, one winner. Come on, Nick. So it wasn't a real easy day to lead, but you sort of didn't want to be too far off the pace as well.
All right, so that was the track intel for Scone. Let's get to the Hen House, mate. So the races that we identify, and as you've spoken about probably off the top as well, there is some chance for these horses to springboard, whether they say in Sydney or whether they decide to try their luck up in Queenslandville. First race you've identified is race 8, Caballas.
Now, he was zoomed as a gelding. So first up as a gelding, sort of had him earmarked, could see him there. The money was there for him. So all the right things were telling us that this horse was going to run a good race. Overall time, about half a second inside standard, so we like that. Last 400 and 200 for the winner, 22.08, 11.32, top 10 splits for the day there. You can see 6 fastest last 400 metres. So this was a good performance. His last 400 metres relative to sort of standard or benchmark figures was more than 6 lengths faster than what we expect from a listed race closing speed at Scone. So that gives you an idea. He's gone really, really well. I've identified him, I think, as a horse that can go to a Ramornie handicap up at Grafton in early to mid-July. I think how he gets there, you go to a race called the Bob Charlie Stakes out at Randwick on June 7. It's a listed race. The winner is exempt from ballot for the Ramornie. Looks a really nice race for Caballas. I remember watching Caballas in the, I think it might have been the Manicato with Bjorn Baker. I was watching it side by side with him at Moonee Valley last year when I was doing a gig on Channel 7 for someone that we won't talk about. And he said to me then he was desperate to get the horse back to slightly easier races than Group 1 targets. And I think he's been able to do that this preparation as a gelding. I think this horse has turned the corner. The second of the horses to follow, Jules, comes out of race 9. Melody again, Scotty Singleton's mare. Now, when these mares come back and run a peak figure first up like she did or her best fresh figure, you sort of twitch your ears when they're older mares. You think to yourself, sometimes these mares can get right into the zone when they're older. She's done that. Overall time here, almost a third of a second inside standard time. Last 400, 200, 22, 5, 6, 11, 52. Pretty good given what happened on the day. And it was a career peak rating for her at 1,400 metres. I just think she's flying. I reckon the race I picked out for her is the listed Helen Coghlan Stakes for the fillies and mares up at, I think, Eagle Farm on May 31. Okay. It's back to 1,200 metres, but a nice big track where they can usually run on. I think that'll suit her nicely.
Okay, and so obviously she's obviously at the peak of her powers as well, which is great for mares because they usually hold that form. Let's get to the Doghouse, mate. Just a race maybe you identified at Scone that we're a little bit worried about that we think the market might spit out next start. Race 5, I think you've got for us.
Yeah, Cormac T was only looked second up, so I want to give the winner a little sort of half pass here or partial credit. But the overall time here, about almost half a second outside standard time. The first 1,100 metres, so what we would call the first section of the race, was pretty much bang on average. So the last 600 metres was more than 2 lengths below average. So, like I said, the winner only being second up, maybe happy to see it again, but as a race, I'm a little bit cautious. Okay,
so we're against that race 5 and just be careful, obviously, especially those horses that have finished behind the winner, that we think the market might be against them. So maybe there is different form lines we should be looking for. Hits and misses from the PointsBet trading floor here, Nico, for Scone. So we'll just quickly go through these and see if there's any that you've identified that we want to continue to be with, or was it just theoretically their birthday on Saturday and that's why they were supported for whatever reason with the conditions. Race 1, Perfect Justice, $9.50 into $5, runs unplaced, it misses. What are we doing with this horse?
Look, I'm not sure. They took the blinkers off for the first time with this galloper, so maybe that's something for it. I didn't think it probably didn't quite have the best of luck throughout. Its last 200 metres was okay, but it wasn't sort of in the top 3 or 4 for the race itself. So I don't really have a strong answer for you there, Julesy. 1,700 metres, we'll see what Johnny Sargent does with it.
Race 3, a horse called Acacia, $3.80 into $2.40. Now it runs third. We call that a miss. Was there some merit there?
Really good spurt between the 400 and the 200 for this galloper, and then just peaked on its run over the last. So it ran 10.52 from the 400 to the 200, and then 11.76 from the 200 to the post. So just not sure what's happened there. Has it? There's got to be a reason for why it's just hit that wall. I can't sort of give you a reason for why. Its last 400 metres ranked 12th for the meeting. Last 200 ranked 45th. So I would be very cautious about putting the pen through this horse going forward. Usually when they hit a wall like that with 200 out, they get the tongue over the bit. Something happens. It's very rare that they just drop off like that for no reason.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because the market suggested that horse was going to run a big race, and obviously it's ran third, and that last 200 is really interesting that you've identified. So let's keep an eye on that horse next start. We see it. Race 4, O Diamond Lil. Here's a hit, mate. $3.20 into $2.50. It wins the race.
Yeah, she's got a good sharp turn of foot. She was first up. The pace of this race was never going to be quick. It was always going to be sort of moderate to even. And she's got a really good turn of foot. So I think the market honed in on the fact that here's a horse with a superior turn of foot that's not going to be tested in terms of its fitness, and they were able to get the job done.
Great, being able to identify what kind of race shape. That's such an important, valuable lesson in terms of when you're doing the form is understanding what race shape's going to be ahead of these horses and what ones are going to be suited, and obviously nailed it there. Race 5, Perfect Play, 12 into 7, runs unplaced, misses.
Yeah, just coming back a fraction in trip from 1,900 to 1,700 metres. Maybe, it settled quite a few lengths off them. The pace was only even, so it was running considerably negative figures compared to what it had done previously. So I'd be a bit forgiving of the performance. That said, it's deep into a preparation, so I don't necessarily want to follow it.
Yeah, good shout. Race 6, Zealously, another hit, $3.90 into $3.40. It was an even open, flat sort of market, but the market did want to push for this horse, especially at the death.
Yeah, that's right. I actually saw Peter Snowden yesterday. This was the only leader to win at my roast lunch, could you believe it or not? So there you go. Look, this is a good performance. Just went to the front and owned the race, was stepping up to 1,100 metres after a couple of 1,000-metre runs, was able to dictate on speed at a nice even gallop. I just thought it was a really good ride from Braith Knock here. Yes, the horse was good, but he took it to a front, he owned the race, and he gave nothing else a chance.
3-year-old race 7, Thames. Good support for this horse, $8.50 into $4.50. Runs third, it's a miss, but if you took the each way price, probably at that bigger top fluck, you'd probably be okay. This is a horse that had been promising so much. It had 2 unlucky runs. It ran behind Soft Love, which we've been talking about, which was in the race, and a drifter in this one. Probably gate 1 might have been a factor to that for her. And then should have won last start as well, Thames. So she's been knocking on the door with big numbers.
What we see here is a classic race shape where they were actually quite slow early, and then they sort of sped up through the middle stages of the race. The first 200 or 300 metres was quite pedestrian. They started going from about the 700-metre mark. When you get that kind of race shape, it's very hard to come from the tail of the field because you've got to wait for those horses in front of you to take off and then you get going. So it's almost like when you've got a traffic jam, the first cars all start taking off, and by the time the last cars get going, the position of where they're all stopped, if you like, is way, way, way down the road. So it's just that ugly race shape for a back marker where they find it hard to get in. She's absolutely flying, Thames. You can stick with her. I think she can go to the well again a couple more times, Jules, because she's got such a negative racing pattern. And again here, she's gone through the first 500 metres almost 6 lengths below standard. I think she can go again to the well.
Yeah, she's a nice horse. Race 8, Caballos, we've spoken about that horse. We won't need to touch on it. And then the last, Gallant Star, 5 into $3.40, misses, unplaced. What do we do with this horse?
Well, look, he's just gone very fast. He was up on top of the speed there. He was about midfield in a really fast run race. But I'm of the theory with this galloper that in a really fast tempo, he wants 1,200 metres. I just think when he gets up to 1,300 and 1,400 metres, it makes it a bit tougher for him. I also want to make the point, and we tried to make this point when we did our social video on Saturday morning, that the track was always going to become a bit leaderish late because they had drying weather. Yep. And everyone gets used to the race pace and it being a little bit off rail, and then the leaders get to the front. First, I think 3 of the first 4 horses around the home turn finished in the trifecta, so this wasn't a race that was easy to make up ground.
Okay, very good. That is the hits and misses for Scone this week from the PointsBet trading floor. Righto, let's get to the Group 1 review. It was obviously up in Doomben. We were running on a heavy track, so just quickly the track analysis. We were true position the entire circuit, mate. What was the intel here? How do you think the track raced?
Yeah, I thought the track race pretty much how we thought it would. So we always say it's good when it pans out how you want. The intel we gave was lanes 5 and beyond would provide every winner. And it was an off-rail day. Lanes 4 and beyond provided absolutely every winner. So I think you can be forgiving of horses that were trying to make ground, particularly from the back. So it was a bit of an up and off track, Jules, where we only had 2 horses that were more than 3 lengths off the lead at the 600-metre mark win. So you sort of needed to be up there. You didn't want to be down towards the inside. So the way that you told Matty Smith or how you thought you should ride floating, that was pretty much exactly how you had to ride a horse at Doomben on Saturday. Yeah,
and that's the thing with Doomben. It's always been a track that's usually definitely got to be up. And obviously you identified on Thursday that it wasn't going to so much be in, but you still probably had to be forward of midfield, but you were going to obviously fan wide as the day progressed. So good intel there, and that's how it did race. Be interesting to see now Doomben Cup next week, what they do with the rail and where we end up, if it's drying conditions or not. So interesting how that track does play. Let's get to the Group 1 race. It was the Doomben 10,000. Sunshine in Paris wins the race. Pretty well bang on equal standard time. The last 400, 200, not too bad, I think, compared to the rest of the day, but it was the Group 1 race, so they were clearly the best calibre horses that were racing on Saturday at Doomben. What do you make of the race overall?
Look, I think it was okay. It was pretty much bang on standard time as you've identified, but they went out pretty quick here. So they went through the first 600 metres about 5 lengths above standard, or the best part of a second. So for them to just run bang on standard, I think means it's a below par race. That's my thoughts. I'm not going to put it in the doghouse, and I'm not going to bin the race, but I think it probably was entitled to go a little better than what it did, to be honest. The horses that have gone really well, jumped out of the ground, is a horse like Payline. I mean, he's finished off really well. He was held up in the straight as well. Benedetta, she was pretty good. Sunshine in Paris, she was the best horse in the race. She had the best record and the best figures. She's come out on top. That's usually what happens in a fast-run Group 1 race. The best horse wins.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm interested to see where those horses go. So Kingsford Smith Cup, maybe you want a different form line, but these sort of mares might probably just head towards the Tats Tiara. It probably sets up pretty well for them, you'd think.
I think the positive for Sunshine in Paris, she ran the second fastest last 1,000 metres of the day. So one of the things I look for with a horse going up in trip is a strong last sort of at least 800, if not 1,000. The last 200 or 400 being zippy, that just tells you they've got a good acceleration. If you've got a horse that's going up, you want them really, really strong close from the last 800 metres, and that's exactly what Sunshine in Paris did. So now that she's got the Group 1, don't know if they'll bat on, but if they do, certainly you think the Tats Tiara is right there for her.
Beautiful. So that's the Group 1 analysis from the Doomben 10,000. Mate, in the Fox's Den, what do you got for us? I think you got 3 horses for the punters out there.
Let's start with Sir Delius. He was the winner of the day for mine. He was very heavily backed. Look, when we tipped him on Thursday, I think he was 250 or something. Yep. Even with the scratching of immediacy, you're probably still getting just above black figures for him. He ended up starting $1.80. He had no right to win. If you watch the replay, he struck a bit of interference when they came out of the barriers. He over-raced in the middle stages. He was quite fresh. He kind of lost his spot, not hopelessly, but a little bit coming into the home turn. Floating got a clear margin on him, and it's very rare on a rain-affected track where the rail is off that you see a horse kick back underneath one that's gone past it on the outside. First up with 60 kilos on a heavy track at 2,000 metres and win. And to do it, he had to produce the second fastest last 200 metres the entire day. This is the best win all day anywhere in Australia for mine. So he goes into the Fox's Den, and as we said, going into the weekend, I'm still pretty keen to follow him into the spring. Let's have a look at a couple more now. The other one was Pisanello. Now, he's an interesting horse, this bloke. He reminds me a bit of Osborne Bulls. Do you remember him for Godolphin about maybe 10 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago? He's got a really good close on him. He just gets himself in bad positions in races, and that's why he'll struggle to win more than he loses. But he was only beaten 3 lengths by Cabela's. It was race of the day. He ran the best last 200 metres of that race as well. And probably just by that time of the day, it was a bit hard to come from as far back as he was. He's run the best last 600, 400 and 200 metres of the day. His last 600 metres was more than 10 lengths above standard. And I just think you just got to follow him. The key for him is to get the run on track. He needs probably Eagle Farm when the rail's off. That's going to suit this horse down to a T. And then the last of the horses to follow is Highborn Harry. Now, he's a strange one because he comes out of the first event at Scone on Saturday. He was $9 into $7. They did spec him. He got a long way back in Walking Paintings race, but his last 200 metres was incredibly strong. Third fastest last 400 for the day. Fourth fastest last 200 metres for the day. I know he did it off a slow tempo, but this was a 1,700-metre race at benchmark 72 level. I think that's a really positive sign for him going forward, Julesy.
Beautiful. So that's the In the Fox's Den for Nick Ashman from the Scone and Brisbane area.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Now, I wanted to come back to you and go down. We're missing our good mate, Hutchie, so I'm going to fill in for him. So Flemington on Saturday, I noticed there was a bit of rain on the day, and typically that's usually they sort of get a bit wider. Is that how things panned out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just quickly touch on Hutchie. Obviously, West Coast won yesterday, so he's still celebrating in Perth and hasn't been able to make it back. No, we wish you well, Hutchie. We know hopefully you get better soon. So, yeah, absolutely, no doubt. I mean, this is the one time when Flemington can be beaten up a little bit is when you get the rain on race day. We know it's such a great draining track now. Very much different drainage from now compared to, say, in spring when you can get plenty of rain on race day and it actually drains so well because you've got those drying conditions in better, warmer weather. Not so much in winter months, but out 4 metres the entire circuit. We were on the soft 7 all throughout. Now, here's when you're reviewing this meeting, you definitely have to split the straight races. You should anyway, but races 1, 3 and 6, I think have raced a rating slower than the circle races as a starting point. So they've been a little bit slower. Then I think the last race, race 9, it's been a genuine heavy track again. So you're going to have to cut it off and obviously take it out of the sample size as well because they've just got nowhere near the standard time, that race 9. And so just be careful when you're rating it. No doubt middle to wide lanes were a huge advantage up the straight for those 3 races. We'll talk about that a little bit later in setting fire to it. But as I said, those times are a little bit slower. on the straight races compared to the Circle. Circle, even I thought, look, no doubt they edged off the inside as the day went on, and that just happens. And we talked about it on Thursday that we thought leaders would struggle. They did. As predicted, we thought the leaders would struggle around Flemington, and that's what happened. So that's the track intel for Flemington. There's a bit in it, and you're going to have to take your time if you are reviewing it because no doubt there's some variables that have happened throughout the day.
Now I'm going to ask you about your Hen House. I see you got a couple of horses in here for us to follow going forward.
Yeah, again, so really tricky day. So got to be careful when we're reviewing it, Nico. But I thought the first race, so I think, as I said, it's raced as a rating slower than the Circle, but a horse called Madame Maserati won the race. I've got it going a quarter of a second inside standard time. The last 400, 200, pretty good. In particular, the winner coming home 12.33, which is pretty good overall. This is a horse that's got a pretty good profile now, continues to win, but I'm probably more interested in a horse like Run Like Encryption, which was drawn on the inside and just wasn't the place to be. I mean, it comes off Broadway. It's only had the 2 starts, gone through the roof both starts. It was taking its first step to Metro. I think there's a win in it, again, probably in the Metro area. Placed right. So I just think this is a race that I think the market gravitates towards. I think we can be with this race going forward. The other race was a higher quality race, which is race 8. Now, I know it was won by a horse at a big price, Macram, which you would know pretty well from your time down here working the numbers as well, Nico. And he's always had great ability, this horse, but just occasionally puts it in. I mean, he started at 40s here. Again, sort of a fifth of a second inside standard time. Last 400, 200, pretty good. Look, here's the thing. The last 400, 200 is really awful, but the winners come home 12.47, just about outstripped the race overall by about 3/4 of a second. I just think there's some horses in behind the winner here that we can follow with some confidence. So I think it's a race that if you really pick the eyes out of it and they actually place those horses in similar kind of races, they're the ones we want to be with going forward. So race 1, race 8. Did you have any that come up on your numbers that you sort of want to identify for the punters? Because I think you might be race 3, I think was the one that you looked at.
Yeah, I've got race 3 here, so handwritten notes here, forgive me. But race 3, Star Sirius was having its first go down the straight. It's got a little bit of upside still. Just ran a career peak, not saying absolutely smashed it, but it still run a career peak. Last 400, 200, both ranked second best for the entire meeting. So I thought it was a pretty handy race. And in that same race, the third place horse, I had something on her, Cindy Falls. Her overall time was just a fraction below standard, but her last 600 metres was almost 9 lengths inside standard time. Last 200 metres was almost 6 lengths inside standard time. Once she got balanced up and got around heels, she was launching late, Jules. Best last 8, 6, 4 and 2 of the entire meeting. She was having her first go down the straight. I wouldn't be surprised if the Hope camp give her another run down the straight, because I think with a slightly faster tempo, she can probably get a win under the belt in this kind of grade.
Yeah, this is a really interesting horse because she was off 180 days plus and she's shown ability. Like, I think she's ran really good races in the Cochrane over 1,400 metres and things like that in the past. I almost feel like is this the one that she was really wound up and they've left it in the bag because they just got too far back? It'll be really interesting to see what they do with this horse second up, whether they do keep her at this distance or they want to push to 1,400 where they've sort of had some success in the past. But there's no doubt that was the big monster closer in the race. It's just going to be interesting. I just thought maybe was she really wound up and they wanted to win that race? I don't know, but she looks like she's come back really well. So that's a good one that you've identified. My Doghouse is an interesting horse because I think it's going to go up to Queensland for the Queensland Derby. It was race 5, so it was a 3-year-old race, 2,000 metres. It was a horse called Politely Done wins the race. Third of a second outside standard time. Now, I know they're stayers, so they're always going to have probably a weaker last 400, 200 compared to the rest of the day, especially compared to 1,400-metre races and below. 13.08 is the last 200. Now, for the winner, it was 12.81, so outstrips that by about 1/4 of a second, so that's fine. But I've just got this race rating really poorly, so I know that it's going to be a horse that's going to probably be talked about into a Queensland Derby. I think, look, it's going to struggle in a Queensland Derby, I would have thought. I'll be against it, and I think the horses behind it I don't want to be with either, so I think the market takes a set against it.
And that's a good one to do. I'm going to come back and ask you some questions about fillies and mares. Fillies and boys going to those Queensland Derby and Oaks. But before we do that, let's get into the hits and misses. Race 1, we had Harry's Yacht. My son watched this race. 550 into 440. Settled sort of midfield, but didn't figure in the finish. I do know, though, that he pulled up lame, Julesy.
Yeah, I'm sorry for Harry Ashman having to watch this horse, and obviously hope he didn't have his $2 on it. But this is a really interesting horse that the market gravitated towards this one. I think maybe eventually if you look at it, you go, maybe it's a bend horse. I know you said it's pulled up lame, so maybe there's issues there. But also, we've spoken about this a little bit. I'm just not trusting that Moonee Valley form from probably the last meeting and the meeting before. I was surprised the market gravitated towards it. I'm off it. I want to see it around a bend. Let's leave it from the straight.
Okay, race 2 was the Opportunist. It was pretty heavily backed for the Hayes boys, $4.20 into $3.70. And they did vet this horse post-race. They couldn't find any abnormalities. What about its starter?
Yeah, they couldn't. They sort of said that maybe, it might need a bit of a freshen up. So I did run it at Warrnambool. We know that Carnival, you can win at Warrnambool and be really competitive and then struggle at your next start for whatever reason. That seems to what happened to this horse here. 2-year-old race. Maybe they were just trying to find some race form because that had some type of numbers behind it, but I was surprised in the move for it. But yeah, disappointing.
Isabella in race 3, the benchmark 78 over 1,200 metres was 650 into 550. Went to the front. Was that the problem?
Possibly, and if you're really clutching at straws with that, it's a horse that I just can't get a hold on. Again, they wanted to be with it. It was off a freshen, but its best runs are usually when it's been freshened, so no real excuse there. I was again surprised at the push for it, but I don't know if I'd want to be with it again. I want to see it again before I'm starting to push my money in towards it.
What happened to King Zephyr in race 6, the straight 6? He was pretty well backed, black figures into red, finishes down the track, beaten about 6 lengths by Title Fighter.
Yeah, there's no doubt he was disappointing. Probably comes to the end of the prep. I know he's gone to the paddock now. I think they announced that this morning, Nico, so we'll wait to see him probably back in the spring. Yeah, he came up along the inside, and as I said, I don't think that was the place to be up the straight from that draw, but in saying that, he was still disappointing. So, look, his numbers were huge. There's no doubting that. I can understand why the market gravitated towards him, but we don't have to worry about him for a while now. He goes to the paddock. He'll come back a better horse.
Berkshire Breeze was beaten again. Well backed. It was well backed at Mornington for their cup. It was $2.20 there. Got beaten by Banker's Choice. Vaselina now tails it up in the Ramsden Stakes. Is it the end of the line for Berkshire Breeze?
I think so. He's got these numbers that sort of probably going back 12 months ago where you were looking at and going, okay, well, this is why he's continually getting backed. And he sort of looked at the 400 to be the winner. He stormed up and just seemed to have plenty of horse. And then he got overrun and, he got beaten out of sight, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't know with him. Like this is his grade and, he might win one of these, but he's not going to get mine at the pointy end.
El Rocco. In the 1,600 metre race, when that rain comes, there's couple of certainties in life: death, taxes, and the punter's backing El Rocco when the rain arrives on race day.
And that's exactly right. And that's all you need to worry about from this horse going forward is when it's a wet track, whatever price he is on the Wednesday, he's going to be a lot shorter on the Saturday. And when you get to a firm track, it's going to go the other way. And that's purely as simple as that.
The last race, you delivered the goods for us with Liberami getting the cash, $2.50 into $2.35, just back out to $2.40 late in the piece. What did you make of this performance?
Yeah, look, this is the right horse, and we spoke about it on Thursday, just that this is the horse that's got great acceleration. What do we love when we see horses with great acceleration when they're down in weights? And this is the only time this horse has actually carried 54. The last time he carried 54.5 was he won at Flemington over 1,400 metres, a little bit further in distance here, was in the right spot. Yes, he was off 26 days, but deep into the prep, hard fit horse. He was always going to be well supported, and to be honest, he never looked like losing.
There's a thing on the rundown here, setting fire to it, which is that a little slot that you and Hutchie do where you basically bin a couple of races.
Yeah, so what happens is more or less we're just at some stage identifying races. Usually it's just one race and we identify whether it was a tactic by the jockey or whether it was something that happened in the run that you just knew your money was getting torched and you were throwing it straight into the fireplace. For this week, I've identified it was actually just all straight races. So races 1, 3 and 6. So I'm just going to show the last 200 metres and we'll roll through the last 200 metres of all these 3 races. What we can identify here is if you'd drawn the inside and you had your money on these horses, whether it be early or even in the run, you just thought, okay, I want to be with this. This is the best horse, but a draw 1 to 4. Barriers 1, 2, 3, 4. You were just gonzo. I mean, especially in race 6 where the money just wanted to be with these horses out wide, and that's where they were. Sometimes when we have a bet and you can just see in the run, you're torched, and that's exactly what happened here. with these races, as you can see, all outside barriers, middle to wide lanes is where you needed to be. If you drew 1 to 5, I think be really forgiving. Like I spoke about race 1, Run Like Encryption behind Madame Maserati. I think that's a horse that can really progress. So be forgiving of that. There's a few others throughout the day that I think have drawn inside barriers that I think we can give another chance to. So you set fire to it on Saturday. Hopefully we can retrieve it over the next couple of weeks.
Right, Fox's Den, you've got 3 in it for us. We kick off with a Stero, and I see you got one that I had something on Saturday as well, Wings of Song. I'm keen to know what you think of it.
Yeah, so a couple here from Flemington. Astero, I just thought, drew one of the insides up the straight. I think this horse is a 1,400-metre wet track horse. It can go to the front probably at 1,400 metres. Next start, I'd be looking at that kind of distance for it. Same kind of ground, 1,400 metres, same kind of sort of handicap conditions. I want to be with Astero. I think they'll ride it a little bit more positive. Well, I know they will because I'll be telling the camp to do it. Wings of Song, obviously, is the one that you backed. It was second up on Saturday, and it loomed into the race like it was going to be the winner. I just think third up. No, it was actually third up on Saturday. So fourth up now. Yep. This horse is ready to explode in this camp. We know they're better third up, fourth up, fifth up into this camp. Be with this horse. But what I want to see is, and the jockey did nothing wrong on Saturday, what I want to see with this horse is a senior jockey to go on. You get the senior jockey on. I think it'll stand over Wings of Song, and that's going to be the key for Wings of Song, fourth up wherever we see it. I want to be with it off that basis. And then we go off Broadway a little bit. This horse won a Mornington Maiden. It's another 3-year-old filly that just seemed to continue to progress. She can go to the top. I've got her going absolutely enormous. I speak about it plus 9.5, which doesn't mean much to too many other people, but it's a high rating. I don't know where they go. Hopefully they go to just a 64 or 70. I expect her to keep winning. Her name is Trembles. That is the Fox's Den for this week from Flemington. Nico, I've got a couple of questions for you just as we finish off here.
I've got one for you too.
Beautiful. Sir Delius, we've spoke about him. Are you still bullish about him going into the spring?
Yep. Cool. I don't know if they'll go Caulfield Melbourne Cup, but definitely Melbourne Cup. He's the one to beat in my opinion. He's got a very good European rating. He's clearly settled in well. You just don't see horses do what he did on Saturday visually. And then you look at the data and go, second fastest last 200 metres of the meeting, and he was inside standard time. So that's a really good showing for him. And he carried 60 kilos too, Jules. So really positive for him. Really looking forward to the spring. I think he wins the Q22 before he gets there. Follows a similar path to Without a Fight. They might go to the Cox Plate. As I said, we've sort of dubbed him Mini Fiorente. Fiorente, of course, did the Cox Plate into the Melbourne Cup, so we'll see what unfolds there. I wanted to, before we get to the spring, though, we've got the Queensland Derby in Oaks. Now, you put the pen through Politely Done's race, which was the 2,000-metre 3-year-old race at Flemington on Saturday. Is there anything else from down there that we can keep a bit of an eye on? When I look at the Queensland Derby, with all due respect, I think it looks pretty weak this year. So I reckon it could be a race where something could come from left field and cause a bit of an upset.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you look at the futures with PointsBet and you've got Politely Done sort of into around $10, $11. So, and he's sort of the fresh horse. But as I've stated, I don't really trust that form line. There's an interesting horse that may go there, but the thing is that it'd have to run this week and then be quick 7-day backup to get to Queensland for it to happen. So it might just all happen a bit too soon. It is 50-1, but it's called the Muffin Man. So it'll be second go 2,000 metres, I hope, this Saturday somewhere, and I want to be with it. And then I think it would have to be quick 7-day backup. It's the only one, I think, from Victoria that I'd want to push the punters into, but I don't know where it's at. I know it's still active. So hopefully I see it this week. I want to see another 2,000-metre run into it and then get to the Derby distance. I think if they went straight to the Derby, I don't think it'd probably get in the field anyway. But that's the one I'd be pushing into is the Muffin Man. I'd be staying away from that form line of Politely Done, which we saw on Saturday. From an Oaks point of view, again, we've probably got another one that's probably a bit of a talking horse that we tipped into the punters last week, was called Mary Eliza, which won quite well. It had to be pushed forward. But that's a horse that I think it might all come a bit too soon for the Oaks. I know they got a little bit more time compared to the Derby, but again, she probably has to run this week. And it'd be really interesting to see how she recovers from that, because she had to get worked really hard on a really fast tempo, and then her last 200 was really soft compared to the rest of the day. Did the job for us on that day to win the race. I wouldn't be surprised if she struggled a little bit after that race. And that might be now she gets the flat one. So I'm a little bit skeptical of Mary Eliza because I know the market's sort of gravitating towards us. But other than that, from a fillies point of view, we don't really have anything here that I could push you into. Obviously, Benagil, we can probably claim anyway, and she's going to start favourite in it. So
she does look the one, doesn't she, Benagil?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. That was a monster rating, that New South Wales and probably that South Australian
SA Oaks.
SA Oaks. And probably the second horse coming out of that race as well was pretty good form line as well. So if it runs it also. But you would think that is the right form line, what I would suggest. And we spoke about it on the review after the SA Oaks. You were really bullish about Benagil and the number that she produced, and I'm with you there. So if she holds her form, she's going to be mighty hard to beat. Just quickly, a horse that I was madly in love with, and I'm not giving up on her because I thought the gate one was probably not ideal. She drifted in the market. Her name was Soft Love. What did you think of the run?
Yeah, look, I don't think everything went right for her, and she was underneath horses. That said, she was probably just a couple of lengths more disappointing than what I would have expected from her. So, look, she's had to travel interstate. She's had to settle in at Scone and, go a different way. So maybe it's just all come a bit too soon for her, Julesy.
Yeah.
We know the abilities there. I don't think Matt Laurie and the team will be disappointed that they've gone interstate and have a crack, but I don't know what he does now. I don't know if you can push on to a Fred Best in Queensland off the back of that. You've probably got to take stock and go back home, I would think, but I'll leave that up to him and you long to work out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was an interesting one because I did get a message from a fellow punter on the Friday who I rate highly, and he sort of said, "Oh, you big on Soft Love?" And I said, "To be honest, mate, it's a no bet for me. I think gate one's no good. The freshen worries me a little bit, and I just want to see what she does in the travel." Exactly the comments that you've just made there, that she had to travel, and then I thought she'd be a launch job probably in the Fred Best, no matter what she did. So I'm still hoping that they still go on and have a crack because I think now she'll really springboard off that, and I think we'll see a really big run next start. But they also might pull up stumps and say, hey, let's just keep this filly for the spring. So that'll be interesting. But, mate, well done again. Thank you. This week I think they go back to a metro track. I think it's Randwick Saturday, but we've got the Doomben Cup as well.
Randwick. Yep, Doomben Cup on Saturday. So you've got, Pride of Jenny, Buckaroo. They're all butting heads there. Antino, who was awesome in the Hollandale, wasn't he? Randwick on Saturday. What do you guys got down your way?
We've got Sandown Hillside. So we're metros, but it'll be interesting. We're definitely in the middle of our winter now. So we're looking for winter horses that obviously hopefully can progress to maybe the Winter Championship sort of finals at the sort of first week of July. So we're off Broadway, but Doomben's definitely not. Randwick will have some fun as well. And to Hutchie, our friend out there, you get well soon, but hopefully the Eagles winning has provided you a good tonic. We'll see you next week, Hutchie. I'll see you Thursday, Nick Ashman.
See you, brother.
What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.